What was it like when the series was coming to an end? I know some casts will say, gee, we didn't know until 2 weeks before that the episode we shot last week was the last episode. When the series was coming to an end after all those years, did you guys know in advance? Did you plan? What was that
Well,
like?
actually, and Hal, every time we've been together on interviews or something, he always brings this up. The network still wanted us to go. And Danny, who had to drop out for a time, he had a heart attack and a stroke and stuff. And he finally came back, but he got us all together and he said, okay, the network wants us to keep doing it. If you guys want to do it, I will. I don't want to start repeating scripts, but I'll read every, submission that comes in from high school kids and college, whatever, to try to find stories. And if you want to do it, I'm in, and we kind of talked amongst ourselves. And I, again, having no thought of what might be on the, kind of taking things for granted in a way, but we pretty much as a group decided, no, let's quit while we're on top, while we're still popular. We were never like a number one show. We were always right there at around 10 or 11. But we got Peabody Awards. We only got one Emmy for the show. I think Hal got an Emmy. A bunch of us got nominated multiple times. So in terms of that kind of acknowledgement, but we know it was already more popular in reruns than it was on the air. And anyway, so we knew it was going to end. For me personally, we had done a show a year or two before. I think it was the year before, but anyway, about a Native American guy, older guy, who wants to die in Central Park. And Wojo, has brought him in, and Wojo ends up taking him to the park so he can die there. Mm. And it was a very popular episode. It was the only time where they aired a rerun during the same season.
Right.
And
it was so popular.
And then when it came to doing the contract for the last season, I had an idea for a show that I felt would deal with, by now I really understood Indians aren't like somewhere in the past way out there. There were a lot of not only Mohawk and other Six Nations people who worked on the high steel, but there were people, working in the police department, and there were, and I had a story in mind that would kind of show these different points of view, that there's not just an Indian point of view. And I had it in my contract that we would do an episode. And it got down to, Danny came down one time, he says, okay, well, here's the ending to answer your question. The last 3 episodes are going to lead to the 12th precinct being declared a historical building, and that how it would play out. And I brought up because that was maybe just maybe 5 more shows to do. I said, I have my deal. We do an Indian show, and I have this story that I felt really had a way of sharing what I had come to learn. So they said, okay, that's right. It's already a deal. So a couple of the writers came up with an idea, said that would be an older Indian and the younger guys, and they're trying to get the older guy to, to kind of get with it in the modern era. And I said, that's the cliche, but that's not at all what's going on. Mm-hmm. Young Indian people today are, cherishing their elders and finding them and looking for what, that's not at all what's happening in the Indian world,
Right.
And, right. So, but I was never able to make my case. We ended up doing a story. It involved some part of what I had said, which is somebody goes and wants to get some items out of the museum, that feels like they shouldn't be there, because museums at that time were holding a whole lot of stuff. in their basements and stuff, holding remains of people, so all of that was being brought out. Looking back on it, I did not communicate what I was getting very well. And I asked Danny to read some of my friends, and he did, and he cast one of them. But he said, if I cast one of these guys, I don't want them coming over taking over the set. I said, Danny, we just did like the episode before we did where a whole bunch of traditional, Hasidic Jews had come in and taken over the whole police station. And there was smoke in the air and the squad, it was all, and, I was saying, just as there are people that think that, feel that Israel is their homeland. Well, there are people here that it's their homeland. They feel like they've done, anyway. I just, I wasn't as good as maybe I would be now at understanding what it was that people didn't understand, and communicating better. So I've always felt a little sad that we didn't do the story that I had in mind, because I think it would have really been more meaningful than what we did. But it wasn't a surprise to us. We had voted and decided to end it, and it was one thing that happened was after the last, we finished shooting. Everybody stayed around. They put up a room, with just those walls. Behind those walls are 1x3 lumber and a thin plywood, that makes the wall, and then the wallpaper or paint or whatever on it. They're flats that can be moved around and stored, and so they made a room for us to have our final party in. And I remember staying. Ron and Glass and I were, not for the first time, about the last ones to leave, and we'd all been, drinking and stuff. And I remember we didn't know that while we were partying, they were coming. Other people were coming in and breaking the whole set down, the whole Barney Miller set, Barney's office, the desks, everything. So we stepped out of this. Excuse me. We stepped out.
It chokes you up just thinking about it.
No. Well, I got a whole head. I have a rhinovirus. Anyway.
So they're tearing down the set.
That room.
Yeah.
And there was nothing but an empty sound stage. And then as we were stepping out and heading toward the door, they broke that room down. I mean, they do this all the time.
They
takes them a few minutes, and
they're done.
So the whole thing was gone. I mean, eventually it was set off to the Smithsonian. I don't know if it's still there, but
I was going to say, was any of the set, the props or anything, was it saved? Was it salvaged? Has it gone into a museum, or is it?
It all went to the Smithsonian.
It's in the Smithsonian.
I don't know if it's still there, but it went.
But it went in.
It was displayed for some time, maybe still. I don't know.
Right.
It's been a long time.
But that's emotion. It's emotional, when you're there together, and you have these comrades and colleagues putting out incredible product every week, like Barney Miller, and then you come out of that party room and it's an empty hole. It's that's when it really hits. Did you? What is it like now, all these years later, to have so many people that not only love the character of Detective Stan Wojciehowicz, but all of the characters and the series today? It must, like I said earlier, so many younger generations are discovering it. And then there's generations of people who have followed it forever, and it's still beloved. And people are craving nostalgia right now, too. People are craving things that make them feel good, that bring back memories, maybe a little bit of a simpler time in their mind. Where does it place for you? Why is it still so popular and still resonate with so many people today, my friend?
Well, I guess it resonates certainly with people who are around and saw it, or people. It's very common for someone to tell me, "I used to watch that with my dad," and often that's followed by "he was a cop."
Yeah.
So there were a lot of households in those days that just had, most of them just had one TV, and we were up against the Waltons, so a lot of people
Yeah.
watched the Waltons.
Right.
But a lot of other households, it was like that's the show that Dad wants to watch.
Yeah.
And people say, I didn't get it then, but I do now, uh, or that's what made me want to be a cop. Anyway, there's all of that. I'm not sure, how many it is in terms. There's the whole. There's so much content from so many different sources. Um, I, I sometimes think, how might Danny and the writers and all of us have dealt with what's going on now.